Stepping Stones is a volunteering organisation. We organise for expatriates to teach English to students in the migrant schools in Shanghai. I guess expats living in Shanghai consider themselves to be living fairly privileged lives, and a lot of them have time on their hands if they're not working, and they want to give back to society, and Stepping Stones has proved itself to be a very meaningful way for people to get engaged with the local community and do something meaningful with their spare time. But it's caught on very quickly in China. When I first came to China about 20 years ago, there was no concept whatsoever of volunteering, and there were no charities in existence. So the whole not-for-profit sector has grown really only in the last 10 years. And it's grown very fast, I think, because people's financial situation has grown a lot, has improved a lot. People have started to look outside of just helping themselves and their families and looking at a greater meaning in life. So, like anywhere else in the world, economic growth has brought with it a search for other meanings in life other than wealth. So, just in the last few years, there's been a massive increase in volunteerism. It was considerably increased by the Sichuan earthquake in 2008. That really caught a new wave that had already started. But since the Sichuan earthquake, volunteerism has become extremely popular among Chinese people, especially young Chinese people. I got familiar with the situation of the migrant schools in Shanghai about 5 years ago when I visited several. I was doing some research for a project, and I went to visit several schools, and at each school I asked what kind of help the schools needed from society. And at each school they asked me if I could come in and teach English to their kids, because they struggled most of all with English teaching. There's a big lack of qualified English teachers in China in general, but especially in rural China. The migrant children are rural children who've moved from rural parts of China to Shanghai with their parents who are working here, in mostly manual labourers. And the teachers who've moved with the migrant children from the provinces are also rural teachers, and there's a massive shortage of qualified English teachers among that population. So they really are not able to offer the same level of English education in the migrant schools as they are in the public schools in Shanghai. And yet, of course, the migrant schools and the migrant children are now having to compete with the public school children. Well, it all started very much word of mouth. So as I say, I discovered the need, and I happened to know people in the community who had already asked me what they could do, how they could get involved in community service here. So it was a natural thing to organise some of those people that I already knew to go and teach English in the schools, and the word got out. So a lot of other people heard about it, people spoke to their friends wanted to get involved. So for the first couple of years, Stepping Stones really just grew through word of mouth. And that's just, testimony to the number of people out there who were looking for those kinds of opportunities and not finding them in Shanghai. So that's how it got started. A couple of years in, the movement gained momentum, had gained so much momentum that it was clear we needed really to found an organisation and have some infrastructure to this programme that was growing. And it's another situation that's really in flux. There are many NGOs now operating in China in all sorts of different forms. There are the government-run ones, so we have the Gongos, and then we have quite a lot of international NGOs who are operating in China, most of them still unable to fully register because government regulations haven't quite allowed full registration of international or any kind of NGOs, especially the foreign ones. So there are a lot of organisations and most of the big organisations in the world are here, and many of them have been here for many years, more than 20 years, but operating without a full licence. So it's a very typical Chinese thing. Like, you've got on the one hand very restrictive regulation, but on the other hand ways of getting around the regulations, working with local partners to achieve objectives. And then in the last 5 years or more, a huge burgeoning of real local grassroots NGOs popping up all over China, in all the different fields that you'd expect. Some of them registered, some of the local NGOs, most of the local NGOs are now registered one way or another. We also have there are a lot of foreigners around like myself who've set up small organisations, not necessarily registered, but usually working with a local partner. So it's a typical Chinese situation where the regulations are pretty restrictive, but there's always a way around things, and it's all about relationships, like everything else in China. But within, I would think, about the last 5 years, there's been provision for local NGOs to register. And there's not just the provision, they're actually getting through. Whereas the foreign NGOs are just starting to get through. It's still very murky and unclear. It's unclear there's no clear path to registration yet. And so everyone's trying different things. So it's pretty interesting. You asked me why Stepping Stones was called Stepping Stones?
Yeah, why is it called Stepping Stones?
Well, it took us a long time to come up with a name. As you know, we operated for a very long time just as sort of those people who were organising English teaching in the migrant schools, but that didn't work very well. So it was in 2000, hold on. Yeah, it was in 2008 that we finally came up with a name. And the reason we called the organisation Stepping Stones is because one of the important aspects of the organisation is the bridging of 2 different communities in Shanghai. And it's not just the expatriate and the migrant community, it's also the local Shanghainese community with the migrant community. And the Shanghainese community and the migrant community is as polarised as the expatriates and the migrants. So that's one of, I would say, probably the most important thing that Stepping Stones is doing. It's bringing 2 communities in touch with each other and learning from each other. Why Stepping Stones? Because it's small steps, it's children, it's our logo is rocks across a river with an adult's pair of feet and a child's pair of footsteps on the rocks. So the idea is of an adult holding hands with a child and helping them across this river, which is the difficulty of learning English that they face, but it's also about connecting communities. So that's why we ended up with the name Stepping Stones.